Welcome to Leadership Devotionals. For today, we will be starting a new series. And this time, we will be talking about Nehemiah. Nehemiah is one of the leaders of the church in the Old Testament. And Bible scholars and theologians have studied his life from the writings of the book in the Bible that bears his name. And they have concluded that this man, Nehemiah, is a servant leader. And so our new series that we are starting today is entitled Nehemiah, the Servant Leader. An author, Robert Greenleaf, offers the following thoughtful definition of what is servant leadership. He says, the servant leader is servant first. Okay? The servant leader is servant first. It begins with the natural feeling that one wants to serve. To serve first. Not just only to serve, but to serve first. Then conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. And so the process is serve first, and then lead. And it is a conscious choice. The difference manifests itself in the care taken by the servant, first to make sure that other people's highest priority needs are being served. The best test, of course, is, do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, and more likely themselves want to become servants? And so this thoughtful definition of servant leadership is very apt and can be seen in the life of God's servant in the Old Testament named Nehemiah. Now, his view is compatible with the understanding of servant leadership emerging from the remarkable experience of Nehemiah, a determined and selfless post-exilic Jew serving in the Persian court 4 centuries before Christ in the Persian Empire. And so we can see here, this man, Nehemiah, is a servant there in the Persian court, but he made a choice. He made a conscious decision to lead. Notice this. Leaders make choices all the time. They can settle for what is just there, or they can dream about what might be. When they devote themselves to such dreams, they invite those around them to share the vision and travel with them on a journey towards the realization of this vision. One such visionary is the center of our topic, who is Nehemiah. Born into a displaced Jewish family in a foreign land. Remember, 100 years before that, Jerusalem was besieged and was defeated and overrun by the Babylonians. And so certain Jewish exiles were brought to the land of Persia. The empire that followed or defeated the Babylonians were the Medes and the Persians. And it is at this point in history, it is at this point in time where Nehemiah was born. And so he was born here in a foreign land from a displaced Jewish family, displaced from their place of origin. And he is introduced into the Hebrew Scriptures 141 years after the final destruction, or after the defeat of Israel and the destruction of Jerusalem in the hands of the Babylonians. The reality here is that he is a true slave. Okay? The reality here is he was a slave, and being a slave in that time, you are a dispensable person. He works as a cupbearer for the emperor. Now, when they get people to work as cupbearers for the emperor, that's not a position that one has to gloat about, or one has to say, I'm here in the royal court. No, because a cupbearer is there as a human test tube. You see, before the king drinks the wine or drinks the water or whatever it is, that same liquid is first tested by the cupbearer, and the cupbearer is observed. If the cupbearer does not die, then the king drinks it. If the cupbearer dies, they just get another servant and become the cupbearer. And this is the work of Nehemiah. His job is to taste the wine before it is passed to the king. Since predecessors to the current king had lost their lives through poisoning, his role was uncomfortably vital to the ongoing existence of the king. Yes, that's true. His role is vital for the existence of the king, but he was definitely someone that can be dispensed with anytime. That's why his life here is living every day under the shadow of death. Well, going back to his ancestry, to his line as a Jew, this man had no personal knowledge of Jerusalem. He was born in Persia, and he had not been there in Jerusalem. But like other Jews in captivity, he looked to the ancient capital, to Jerusalem, as their ultimate home, the place where his heart resided. It was a place that gave meaning to his existence, and we see just how much he cared about this distant homeland when news reached him that the walls are broken and crumbled and the gates are burned. And that when he heard this news, sorrow filled his heart. Feeling helpless, remember, he was just a slave and he was just a servant in the Persian court. And so what can he really do? He was helpless. He had no means, he had no resources. And so, feeling helpless, he did the only thing that made sense to him. And fellow leaders, when we are helpless, let us look at the example of Nehemiah. What did he do? He was helpless. He had no resources. He seems to be, he can do nothing about that. He did the only thing that made sense to him. And what did he do? He prayed. Yes, he prayed to the God in heaven. He prayed to the God of his forefathers. He prayed to the living God of the Israelites nation. This prayer is the first of 9 prayers recorded in the book that bears his name. We witness his anguish as he fasted. Just imagine this kind of prayer. He fasted, he wept, he mourned, and he kept on praying. Despite being a slave to the king, he of course refers himself as a servant of the Most High God. Nehemiah's prayer was one of intercession. In his prayer recorded in chapter 1 of the book, Nehemiah, that bears his name, Three prerequisites, okay? Three prerequisites of this type of prayer can be identified. The first one is that this man, Nehemiah, was very, very much jealous, or he was very, very much protective of the reputation of God. Yes, God's reputation, God's name. Nehemiah was very, very much protective of that. God's name has to be exalted. God's name, or God's people, or even the symbol of God's nation, that is Jerusalem, has to be protected, has to be exalted. The second one is love for his fellow Jews. He knows that even at a distant land that he is grieving for his homeland. How much more for the Jews who are there? They don't have any protection from their enemies. The walls have crumbled down, the gates have been burned. Nehemiah showed love for his fellow Jews. And the last is indifference for his own life and destiny. It's no joke to make a request to the king, much more the emperor of the Persian Empire. But because of the first two requisites here, jealousy for God's reputation and love for his fellow Jews, Nehemiah became indifferent to his own life and destiny. Although the recorded prayer of chapter 1 is brief, it was part of 4 months of Nehemiah's persevering intercession before God. Just imagine that. He fasted, he wept, he mourned, he prayed, not just for a single day, not just for a week, but for months. Yes, he prayed 4 months. And what happened? God opened an opportunity for him to raise this issue with Artaxerxes the king. Fellow leaders, Nehemiah's example for us here. When we are with nothing, when we are beset with problems that we can do nothing, on our own we are helpless. There is one recourse, one major recourse that Nehemiah has showed for us. Pray. And when you pray, as in the case of Nehemiah, God opened the opportunity that this issue was raised with the king. And that will be what we will talk in the next episode of Leadership Devotionals. In the meantime, God bless you, and don't forget to pray. Hello, fellow leaders. If you have been blessed with the devotional that you have just heard, don't forget to like, share, or subscribe. Because when you do that, more people, more leaders will be blessed with the same blessing that you have experienced. In YouTube channel, click subscribe to Good Shepherd Consultants. God bless you.